December 16, 2009. 4 hours of relentless gunfire echoed through Cuernavaca as Mexican special forces closed in on their most dangerous target. The aftermath would leave drug kingpin Arturo Beltran Leyva dead, triggering a bloody power struggle that would forever alter Mexico's criminal landscape. Forever. This is how every known cartel boss died.
Tranquila, mija, ya viene el helicóptero por ti. Ya viene el helicóptero. Tranquila, hija, tranquila. Vas a estar bien. Trata de aguantar, ¿eh?
January 10th, 2020. The dust of La Bocanada churned as a woman known as La Catrina lay gravely wounded, blood pouring from her neck, while law enforcement scrambled to save her life. This is the story of Maria Guadalupe Lopez Esquivel, the CJNG's infamous Dame of Death and the social media queenpin, whose rise and fall shocked Mexico. At just 21, Maria Guadalupe Lopez Esquivel already held the title of local boss for the CJNG, the powerful Jalisco New Generation Cartel in Mexico's Tierra Caliente region. Her nickname, drawn from the iconic Day of the Dead Skeleton, reflected both her rise through cartel ranks and her obsession with social media fame. But her story didn't begin in violence. She came from a respectable family in Michoacan. Everything changed in 2017 when she met and fell for a cartel enforcer known as M2. Seduced by the narco lifestyle, she abandoned her old life and dove headfirst into cartel operations with M2's crew. Despite her youth and gender, La Catrina quickly proved herself ruthless enough for the CJNG. She commanded her own group of assassins, ran extortion rackets, and coordinated kidnappings. But it was her social media presence, glorifying cartel life, that made her infamous. Her Instagram posts flaunted weapons, luxury, and power, building a dangerous following that would ultimately contribute to her downfall. By late 2019, La Catrina's cell launched a brazen attack on police in Michoacan, killing 13 officers. The brutality shocked even hardened observers, a clear message that CJNG would not tolerate interference. But it also put an even larger target on La Catrina's back, crew relentlessly, using both surveillance and informants to pinpoint their movements. January 10, 2020. Authorities finally closed in on a cartel safe house in La Bocanada, Tepecatepec. The operation erupted into a fierce gun battle. La Catrina was hit, a bullet tearing through her neck. As her crew scattered, she collapsed beside a wall, blood pooling in the dust. Video from the scene shows soldiers desperately trying to keep her alive, reassuring her that help was coming.
Tranquila, mija, ya viene el helicóptero por ti. Ya viene el helicóptero. Tranquila, hija, tranquila. Vas a estar bien. Trata de aguantar, ¿eh?
But even as they worked to save her, 6 cartel members were captured in the operation. Among those detained, reports conflicted about whether her boyfriend M2 was among them. Some say he escaped, others claim he was caught. La Catrina was loaded into a helicopter, her fate hanging by a thread. Despite the rush to save her, she died from her injuries in the hospital. Her last moments, captured on video, became a viral sensation, a stark contrast to her famous Instagram persona. La Catrina's death marked the end of a brief but spectacular rise in the cartel world. Her social media fame made her a symbol of the new generation of narco celebrities, young, brash, and addicted to online notoriety. Authorities seized her cell's weapons and paraded the captured gunman, sending a clear message to others who might follow her path. Her death also brought to light the growing role of women in cartel leadership. While rare, female bosses like Griselda Blanco in Colombia and now La Catrina have shown that gender offers little protection in the violent world of organized crime. The final chapter of La Catrina's story played out not in battle, but in a viral video watched by millions. Her carefully constructed image as the CJNG's Queen of Death was shattered in her final desperate moments, bleeding and helpless, comforted by the very forces she'd spent years fighting. Her distinctive tattoo, La Catrina, inked on her thigh, became a grim identifier in death. If you think La Catrina's fall was dramatic, wait until you see how a man arguably titled the greatest cartel boss in history finally met his end in the most unexpected way.
The killing of Colombian drug lord Pablo Escobar is sending a tougher message. At least that is the hope of Colombian and U.S. officials. Mr. Escobar was gunned down yesterday, and Colombian authorities say its message to other drug lords is to surrender or you will be killed.
December 2nd, 1993, Medellin, Colombia. The hunt for Pablo Escobar came to a deadly end. Surrounded by Colombian special forces, Escobar tried to flee across a rooftop, but bullets found him first. Pablo Escobar, the kingpin of the Medellin cartel, was more than just a ruthless drug lord. To thousands in his hometown, he was a hero, a Robin Hood figure whose shadow loomed large over Colombia's violent drug war. For years, Escobar ruled with terror and charm, orchestrating bombings, assassinations, and floods of cocaine that reshaped the global drug trade. But by late 1993, the walls were closing in. His empire was crumbling, his enemies multiplying. His downfall stemmed from a single careless phone call on his 44th birthday. Authorities traced his voice using technology supplied by the United States, a breakthrough that pinpointed his exact hiding place in a middle class' neighborhood of Medellin.
It was a careless telephone call to his wife and 2 children on his 44th birthday that betrayed his hiding place.
Escobar was caught off guard. As the elite search block stormed the house, he made a desperate run across rooftops. But he was shot multiple times, in the torso, his feet, and finally in the head.
An elite Colombian police unit killed Pablo Escobar in a shootout, cornering him here in this house where he had been hiding in the city of Medellin. Police found Escobar.
The official story says it was a shootout, but conspiracy theories still swirl over who fired the fatal shot. Whether it was Escobar himself, a sniper from rival groups, or the Colombian forces closing in on him. His death sent shockwaves through Colombia and beyond. Officials called it a massive victory against drug trafficking, signaling the end of one violent chapter. But experts warned it wouldn't stop the cocaine trade. Other cartels were ready to fill the void.
Drug trade. This killing is the biggest single blow to international drug trafficking in a decade. But it does not mean that fewer drugs will find their way onto the streets of Britain and America.
Escobar's funeral became a scene of chaos and mourning. 25,000 people showed up, many poor locals who remembered the favors he'd done for them. Soldiers were needed to keep order as his complex legacy divided a city still grappling with the drug war's scars. His death marked the collapse of the Medellin cartel's reign, but set the stage for the rise of the Cali cartel and other criminal organizations. More than a kingpin lost, it was a harsh reminder that the drug war would continue in new forms, with new players. But the moment Escobar's lifeless body hit that rooftop, the era of El Patron was over.
It is really a major victory, not only from a practical but also from a symbolic point of view, because Escobar was the symbol of violence, of corruption, of murders for the past years.
Yet, as one correspondent put it, the king may be dead, but the cocaine trade was not. Pablo Escobar's death may have been brutal and unexpected, but so was the death of the next cartel boss on our list.
The shootout between Mexican special forces and a small army of heavily armed drug gangsters ricocheted through the streets of Cuernavaca, Mexico.
December 16th, 2009. 4 hours of relentless gunfire echoed through Cuernavaca as Mexican special forces closed in on their most dangerous target. This wasn't just another drug bust. It was the moment the Mexican government confronted one of its most ruthless enemies. Arturo Beltran Leyva, known as the boss of bosses, had built an empire through violence, betrayal, and sheer force of will. Arturo wasn't born into power. He seized it. Raised in poverty alongside his brothers, he clawed his way up from street-level enforcer to cartel kingpin. They started as hired guns for Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, but ambition knows no loyalty in this world. When his brother Alfredo was arrested in 2008, Arturo blamed El Chapo, igniting a war that would reshape Mexico's criminal landscape. The Beltran Leyva organization grew more violent after the split. They aligned with Los Zetas, bringing military tactics and brutality to their operations. Arturo became infamous for grotesque displays of power. His enemies didn't just disappear, they served as warnings to others. Beatings, public executions, and gruesome messages became his trademarks. Arturo's empire controlled nearly a third of the U.S. cocaine market, flooding cities with drugs and violence. His organization moved billions in cash each year, money that bought politicians, police, and anyone else standing in his way. But Arturo's real power came from fear. He ruled through terror, making examples of anyone who challenged him.
Only way the government of Mexico City can take on.
President Felipe Calderón made it personal. Deploying 45,000 troops, he launched an all-out war against the cartels. But Arturo was always a step ahead, living openly in Cuernavaca under the protection of corrupted officials. The military couldn't even trust its own ranks. Only the Navy's special forces were considered clean enough for the operation. The final showdown came suddenly. 200 special forces surrounded his luxury apartment complex. The battle lasted over 2 hours. Arturo and his men fought desperately, throwing grenades and using every weapon at their disposal. But the Navy tightened the noose, floor by floor. When the smoke cleared, Arturo lay dead among his men. The scene was chaos, bullet holes everywhere, shattered glass, and the remains of a once mighty empire. But victory came at a cost. 3 sailors were wounded, and the violence would only escalate from here. The power vacuum was immediate.
More people will take his place, and those places will be filled up very quickly.
As experts predicted, violence exploded across Mexico. Lieutenants fought for control, each trying to carve out their own empire from the ruins. The Beltran Leyva name lived on, but the organization fractured into smaller, more violent groups. Arturo's death marked a turning point. The government proved it could take down even the most powerful cartel leaders. But the cost was high. Thousands more would die in the ensuing power struggles. The drug war had claimed one of its biggest prizes, but the violence was far from over. As darkness fell over Cuernavaca that night, the message was clear. No one, not even the boss of bosses, is untouchable. And if you thought this was intense, wait until you see what happened when Mexican Marines turned their sights on the next major cartel leader.
Mexico's Navy says it's confident it has killed one of the country's top drug lords. Heriberto Lazcano, the head of the Zetas cartel, is believed to have been shot during a gun battle with Marines on Monday.
October 7th, 2012. Mexican Marines launched a deadly raid in Coahuila State, targeting one of the most feared figures in Mexico's drug war, Heriberto Lazcano. What happened next would shake the underworld, but also spark a cloud of mystery. Heriberto Lazcano, once an elite soldier turned ruthless cartel boss, led Los Zetas, the cartel infamous for brutal tactics and beatings that terrorized entire regions. Known as El Verdugo, or the Executioner, Lazcano was no ordinary criminal. He built Los Zetas from a band of military deserters into a merciless army of killers, controlling vast drug routes and spreading violence from Mexico into Central America. Under his command, Los Zetas changed the face of organized crime. Instead of just smuggling drugs, they ran kidnappings, extortion, and mass killings. Their signature: publicly displaying the heads of rivals, sending a chilling message to anyone who dared cross them. Lazcano kept a low profile, avoiding the flashy lifestyle of some cartel bosses. But his reputation for brutality was known everywhere. The U.S. government even put a $5 million bounty on his head. Mexico added another $2.3 million. Catching him was a top priority. For years, Lazcano seemed untouchable, but tensions within Los Zetas grew, and so did government pressure. The Mexican Navy's raid was a bold move to finally take down the man behind some of the country's bloodiest crimes. The firefight was intense. After the dust settled, the Navy claimed 2 men died, one believed to be Lazcano.
Confirmation, the Navy says they carried out preliminary forensic reports. They're not really saying what that means, but there are already local reports here that they no longer have the body, actually.
But the story didn't end there. This uncertainty made waves. The government wanted to win after years of relentless violence that claimed over 60,000 lives. But without the body or clear proof, many wondered if this was another false victory. Meanwhile, the crackdown continued. Another Zetas leader linked to the horrific massacre of 72 migrants was arrested just hours before the news about Lazcano broke, showing the government's relentless push against the cartel. The death, or possible death, of Lazcano left a dangerous power vacuum. Rivalries inside the cartel flared, especially between Lazcano and his deputy, Miguel Trevino, known as Z40. Without a strong leader, the Zetas risked spiraling into bloodier conflicts as lieutenants fought for control. El Lazca's death marked a turning point in Mexico's drug war, but it also signaled more chaos ahead as violent turf wars threatened to intensify. The bold raid that night didn't just aim to kill a man, it was meant to send a message that even the most brutal and secretive cartel bosses were vulnerable. Yet the uncertainty over Lazcano's fate kept everyone guessing. If that was a curious case, the next one will blow your mind. In this next case, we see the end of a cartel boss who died twice.
This time it's for real, Mexican authorities say. They have killed Nazario Moreno, one of Mexico's most notorious drug lords and leader of the criminal organization known as the Knights Templar.
March 9th, 2014. Mexican authorities stand before a crowd of cameras, holding forensic evidence. This time they claim the death is real. Nazario Moreno, the infamous El Chayo, leader of the Knights Templar cartel, had finally been brought down, after already being declared dead once before. But how did this all happen? Moreno, also known as the craziest one, first rose to power in Michoacán through La Familia Michoacana. His cartel enforced a twisted moral code while trafficking methamphetamine, extorting businesses, and executing rivals. But in December 2010, the government announced Moreno's death without ever producing a body. For years, rumors swirled that he was still alive, and his legend only grew. Moreno's myth became so powerful that shrines appeared across Michoacán.
Many in Michoacán believed he was alive, and many of those who didn't prayed to him as a saint.
They believed he watched over them from beyond, or perhaps just from hiding. The Knights Templar cartel adopted medieval symbols, presenting themselves as protectors while terrorizing the region. Meanwhile, vigilante groups formed, tired of the government's failures to contain cartel violence. Under Moreno's rule, the Knights Templar wielded brutal power, executions, beatings, drug trafficking, and widespread extortion. They claimed to defend the people while draining communities dry. As their grip tightened, self-defense groups, armed civilians, rose up against the cartel's reign of terror. In 2013, the vigilante movement accelerated. Leaders like Hipólito Mora publicly demanded justice, organizing armed resistance to drive out the Knights Templar.
Hipólito Mora is a leader of a group of vigilantes who rose against the Knights Templar last year, driving them away from the town of Felipe Carrillo Puerto. He says their motives had nothing to do with the medieval Knights Templar.
The government, embarrassed by its earlier failure, renewed the hunt for Moreno. Despite his supposed death, all the vigilante leaders insisted he was alive and still pulling the strings. Meanwhile, the federal government's absence forced ordinary citizens into combat. Armed groups patrolled roads, set up checkpoints, and seized cartel assets. As the vigilantes pressed closer to cartel strongholds, the pressure mounted. By early 2014, Moreno's days of evasion were numbered. March 8, 2014, Moreno's 44th birthday. Federal forces tracked him to a remote area near Apatzingán. When they called for his surrender, he opened fire. The returning gunfire was fatal, finally ending the reign of El Chayo. This time, authorities had a body and fingerprints, concrete proof to erase years of doubt.
This time, however, officials say they confirmed Moreno's identity using fingerprints. They also say they're in possession of...
The government, burned by its previous error, took extra steps to prove this death was real. DNA tests would further confirm the end of the Knights Templar leader. As the dust settled, one thing became clear. Nazario Moreno had finally met his end. But the struggle for control in Michoacán was far from over. The vigilantes' trust in government remained fragile, and the cartel's legacy still haunted the region. The story of El Chayo, the drug lord who died twice, became a dramatic tale in Mexico and the cartel world. But if you think a twice-killed cartel boss is unusual, wait until you see what happens to the next cartel boss.
The atmosphere appeared tense as Mexican soldiers moved into position Thursday in the western city of Guadalajara. They were going after a top leader of the Sinaloa cartel.
July 29th, 2010. The quiet luxury of Guadalajara was shattered by the unmistakable sound of military helicopters. Soldiers moved with purpose. This wasn't a routine operation. They were closing in on one of the most powerful figures in the drug world, Ignacio Nacho Coronel. Coronel was more than just another trafficker. He was the number 3 man in Mexico's most powerful drug gang, the Sinaloa Cartel. A close associate of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, Coronel controlled trafficking routes through 3 Mexican states. His specialty? Methamphetamine, produced in massive clandestine labs and smuggled into the United States. The scope of his empire was staggering, with operations stretching from Mexico's Pacific coast all the way to American cities. For years, Coronel kept a low public profile. Official records showed little about his personal life. Age, place of birth, even basic physical characteristics were blank on many government documents. But authorities knew one thing for sure: he was dangerous, wealthy, and extremely well protected. The operation began with a breakthrough: the arrest of Francisco Quiñones Gastelum, Coronel's right-hand man. Quiñones was the only person allowed to accompany the drug lord to his luxurious mansion. His capture confirmed what authorities already suspected. Coronel was inside, but taking down someone of Coronel's stature was never going to be easy. As soldiers moved in, they encountered fierce resistance. Coronel wasn't going quietly. What happened next proved just how far he was willing to go to protect his empire. Coronel opened fire on the advancing military. Helicopters hovered overhead as the mansion became a battlefield. In the chaos, one soldier was killed, another wounded.
During this operation, Nacho Coronel tried to avoid the action by attacking military personnel with gunfire, killing one soldier and wounding another. Responding to the attack, this cop...
The aftermath was immediate and brutal. Coronel, one of Mexico's most wanted men, lay dead. His empire, built on fear, violence, and drugs, had lost its architect. The operation's success was undeniable, but the cost was high on both sides. American authorities quickly confirmed what Mexican officials already knew. This was a major victory in the drug war. Coronel's death was the most significant blow against Mexico's drug gangs since a major raid the previous December. It also served another purpose: countering persistent allegations that the federal government was favoring the Sinaloa cartel. The impact went far beyond just one cartel. Coronel's death was meant to send a clear message, not just to other drug lords, but to the public as well. It was proof that even the most powerful traffickers could be brought down. But in Mexico's complex drug war, every victory comes with consequences. The power vacuum left by Coronel's death sparked new conflicts within the Sinaloa cartel and rival groups. The violence didn't stop, it simply shifted. But one thing was certain: the man known as El Nacho Coronel would never mastermind another shipment, never order another killing, and never again threaten law enforcement. But if you think this was intense, wait until you see how the man who established himself as Pablo Escobar's greatest rival met his end. Gilberto Rodriguez Orejuela wasn't your typical cartel boss. Known as the chess player, he was the brains behind the Cali Cartel, a criminal organization responsible for 80% of the world's cocaine by the mid-1990s. Orejuela's rise wasn't built on raw violence. Instead, he used methodical calculation and political connections to outmaneuver rivals and authorities alike. By the early 1990s, Orejuela had established himself as Pablo Escobar's greatest rival. While Escobar's Medellin cartel ruled through fear and brutality, Orejuela built alliances, bribing politicians, infiltrating law enforcement, and presenting himself as a legitimate businessman. His network of pharmacies became a front for one of the world's largest drug empires, hiding his true nature behind a mask of respectability. But make no mistake, Orihuela was just as ruthless as any cartel boss. When Escobar became too powerful, the Cali cartel helped fund Los Pepes, the vigilante group that ultimately brought down Escobar's Medellin empire. Orihuela's calculated approach bought him time and influence, but it also created powerful enemies in both the criminal underworld and law enforcement. His downfall began in 1995 when a massive multi-agency operation closed in on his luxury home in Cali. Police found Orihuela hiding in a wardrobe, a fitting end for a man who'd spent years hiding behind legitimate businesses and political connections. What followed was a systematic dismantling of the Cali cartel's leadership. Within a year, 6 of the 7 top bosses were either dead or in prison. Orihuela's arrest marked the beginning of the end for the organization that once controlled the world's cocaine trade. But the chess player still had moves left. While in Colombian prison, Orihuela continued to orchestrate operations, using coded messages and bribes to maintain control over his empire. It wasn't until 2004 that he was finally extradited to the United States, a move that broke his grip on power for good. American justice was less forgiving. In 2006, Orihuela struck a plea deal, receiving a 30-year sentence for his crimes. The man who once controlled billions now faced the slow march of time behind bars. As the years passed, age and illness caught up with the former kingpin. By 2021, Orihuela was 81, struggling with prostate and colon cancer.
Cali Cartel co-founder Gilberto Rodriguez Orihuela is asking a Miami federal judge to allow him to return to his native Colombia and his family. The 81-year-old says he's suffering from prostate and colon.
But the justice system remembered his crimes. The man responsible for smuggling at least $2 billion worth of cocaine into the United States would find no mercy from the courts. Orihuela died in a North Carolina federal prison on June 2, 2022, at age 83. His death marked the end of the last true kingpin era in Colombian cartel history. The chess player, who once controlled an empire through careful calculation, was finally checkmated by time, justice, and history itself. But the cartel world didn't end with Orihuela's death. As his empire crumbled, new power structures emerged, setting the stage for the next generation of criminal organizations. The story of how every cartel boss met their end continues with the last case on our list. October 1st, 2014, Mexican authorities swooped in on a seafood restaurant in San Miguel de Allende. Hector Beltran Leyva, the elusive cartel kingpin, was caught off guard. His days of hiding behind the mask of an art dealer were over. Hector Beltran Leyva wasn't just any cartel boss. At 56, he was the last of the notorious Beltran Leyva brothers to lead their powerful criminal empire. Known as the H, he inherited the reins after his brother Arturo, who was killed in 2009 during a deadly police shootout. The Beltran Leyva cartel controlled some of Mexico's most lucrative drug routes and had a brutal reputation for violence and revenge. Their story wasn't just about drugs. The brothers built a vast network: extortion, human trafficking, racketeering. The Beltran Leyva cartel was everywhere. They even infiltrated high levels of law enforcement and government. But their biggest headline-grabbing conflict was their bloody war against the Sinaloa cartel, led by the infamous Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. Once allies, the split in 2008 ignited a vicious turf war that would shape Mexico's drug trade for years. Hector had been living a double life, posing as an art and real estate dealer. But the pressure was mounting. Mexican forces had closed in after years of cat and mouse. His arrest was a major coup, signaling a serious blow to the cartel. But Hector's fall was just the start. Transferred to a maximum security prison, he faced charges for trafficking marijuana, heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamines. For years, he fought to hold on to power behind bars, but the strain was too much. Then, on November 18, 2018, the unexpected happened. After showing severe chest pains, Hector was rushed from his cell to a hospital near Toluca. Despite all efforts by medical staff, he died of a heart attack. The end came quietly in a hospital bed, far from the violent battlegrounds where he once reigned. His death marked the collapse of the last major brother in the cartel's leadership. Brothers Alfredo and Carlos remained imprisoned. But with Hector gone, the cartel that once terrorized entire regions began to crumble. This was the final chapter for one of Mexico's most ruthless drug lords. But as the Beltran Leyva cartel faded, the violent power struggles among cartels only intensified.